So, hello and welcome to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. I'm super excited that my guest today returns after 3 years. She joined me originally back in 2020 during the height of the lockdowns. What a 3 years you've had. Welcome to Sophie Ellis-Bextor. How are you?
I'm really good, actually. Yeah, I've had a nice day, and it's nice to speak to you again. And yeah, life is pretty good at the moment, actually. Yeah, I'm in a good mood.
I was going to say, you've had a lot happen in the last 3 years. I mean, one of the things that happened, which must have been quite a sort of a highlight for you, was the dance-a-thon for children in need. That must have been A, hard work, B, tiring, but also very rewarding, I imagine.
You know what? This is going to sound a bit strange, but I actually mainly really enjoyed it. I mean, the thing is, you're so in the middle, the epicenter of so much goodwill and support. Um, and a lot of people have done way harder things for longer. I think, dancing and all that for 24 hours. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did get a bit well, like weirded out by the end. I think my brain started to sort of disintegrate, but I did actually have a lot of fun. And it felt like quite a privilege to be able to do something like that. Like I'm really happy I had the experience, and actually, dare I say, I'd do it again, actually, if they asked. I thought I did actually like it that much.
I mean, that must be quite a good thing to have joined the Radio 2 family and a great way to kind of get yourself really involved to do something like that. I mean, do you kind of feel yourself, a firm part of the family now at Radio 2?
Well, I think specifically with the dance-a-thon, what I really liked about that is that because it was a kitchen disco dance-a-thon, it gave a really lovely, positive charity element to the kitchen disco, which I really always wanted. I always had this idea, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did a kitchen disco for charity? So to have the opportunity to raise so much for a charity or as prestigious as that was just incredible. Um, so that was really special. But then, sorry, it was for children in need, I should have said, which was incredible. But I think with Radio 2, that's kind of been something that, I mean, I've always loved radio. It's like my favorite medium. And I started doing a kitchen disco radio show during 2020, actually. And I'm so thrilled to say I'm still doing it. So I do it on BBC Sounds, and it's just an hour of party tunes, really. And my producer David and I have so much fun putting it together and thinking up themes. And yeah, we love it. It's just hopefully the whole thing of it is just to bring a bit of joy to people, really.
I know when we last spoke, you said that one of the things you would love to have done is to actually have had like an audience in your home for the kitchen disco. Is that something you still want to
Yeah.
do?
No, I think what happened with Children in Need was kind of an even better, more spectacular outcome. I don't really know how that would have worked. I just knew I wanted something charity, like I wanted there to be a charity element, just because I felt like that would be, look, the kitchen disco came out of a time when we couldn't do other things. And I just thought, wouldn't it be good if something really positive came out of the weirdness that was lockdown? So that was why it became really important to me to have that. So I'm thrilled that that's what happened.
Now, one of the things that you got to do, which I don't know if it was the first time you'd ever done it, but you got to appear at Wembley Stadium supporting Westlife. I was actually at
Yeah.
that show. I didn't realize you
Were
were going to be
you?
there. So I had the time of my life and was so thrilled when you came on stage. How did that come about for you? Was it just a sort of a meeting of the minds?
So I mean, I love the fact that I get sort of all sorts of weird and wonderful gigs to perform at. And I've done a lot of really amazing support dates since I started, and they're always so exciting. And yeah, Wembley was awesome. And what an incredible venue. And actually, that gig came for us on a Saturday, sandwiched in between doing a gig at a place called Wilderness Festival, which was really incredible. And then on the Sunday, we did Brighton Pride. So it was sort of one thing after another. And performing, yeah, supporting Westlife was really lovely, and great crowd, really good atmosphere. And I think, yeah, sometimes you have so much going on that you actually don't get a chance to kind of catch your breath. And actually, now you're sort of reminding me of it now. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty amazing to perform at Wembley Stadium. But yeah, just a really happy memory, actually.
And I mean, I imagine as well, the other thing you've done recently, Glastonbury. Had you ever done Glastonbury before? What was that like?
So it's my fourth Glastonbury. I played my first in the 90s, actually. But this was my first time on the pyramid stage. And I mean, it's such a prestigious festival, and that is a very prestigious stage. And I was just really excited. I just thought, what an amazing opportunity. How lucky am I that I'm 44 years old and I'm still doing something that's new and exciting at this stage in my career. So I just wanted to like grab it with both hands, really. And not just me, my band, my crew, we were all really pumped and we had an absolute ball up there. I loved every second. It was wonderful. I'm just, yeah, very fortunate to get to do these things.
I know a lot of people have not complained, but disappointed that obviously the set wasn't put on iPlayer, so they can't watch it back as far
Mm.
as I'm aware. I mean, for you, is that a good? I mean, are you glad that kind of it was sort of a moment in time, or would you have liked to have had it on iPlayer for people to watch time and time again?
Well, we knew a few weeks before I would do the performance that due to the hours of when the BBC crew was working on the day that they wouldn't be able to do our set. And look, the reason I was excited about Glastonbury and the reason I was looking forward to it and the reason why it's such a big deal to me is all about the prestige of the festival. So that bit is kind of untouchable. But you know what, with it not being televised, it just leaves another thing to happen, That's I would love the opportunity, hopefully, fingers crossed and all that, to perform on one of the stages and have my set recorded because we put a lot of work into it, but also it went really well. So in some ways, I'm like, oh, it would have been so nice to share it. But that being said, I did understand why it wasn't happening. So it's just kind of say la vie, really. I don't really feel one way or another. It's just what happened, I can't really, it's not like a regret or anything. It's how it was always going to be.
I know that one person who's a big fan of yours, Rylan, he actually had someone appear on his radio show at the weekend. I don't know if you heard this. A lady
I
who
did
actually
actually,
came
yes.
on and said BBC should be ashamed of themselves. I think a lot of people were worried as to what she was going to say. But when you hear comments like that, it must be so nice.
It is. I mean, I don't think I realized how many people were going to notice that I hadn't gone up there. So that's really special. And look, I'm going on tour later in the year. Maybe people can come and find me there. It's okay. It was really special. Nothing can take away from that experience. It was a proper career highlight, and I'm absolutely thrilled I got to do it. It's so special. It's like, I was on like just before like Cat Stevens and Blondie and Elton. Like it's all positive from where I'm standing.
And I mean, I imagine, do you get to sort of see many other bands perform? Was there any highlights for you that you saw? And is there anyone that you thought, oh, maybe we could try and get a duet out of this?
I'm not really thinking about duets right now because I've only just released an album, so I'm not quite in that headspace. But I mean, yes, we watched loads of people. So I watched a bit of Cat Stevens, a bit of Blondie, but a bit of Little Nas X. And then we watched War on Drugs, and we watched Queens of the Stone Age. And then I watched Elton on iPlayer, probably like everybody else, because I felt like that's going to be the best view ever. But it was awesome. I mean, I was in the Glastonbury field until 2:45 in the morning, got on the tour bus by 3, woke up at 7:45 and was on the school run by 8:30. So it was quite a crazy 24 hours.
Now, something else you did, and I came across this clip by chance, but you actually did a live performance in Australia on a boat, I believe. Was that the first time you've ever
Yeah.
performed on a boat before?
Nah. No, it's not. I think this might be the first time I've been on the roof of a boat being filmed. Uh, but yeah, I was that was for a thing called Sunrise, which is a big Australian morning show, and they were doing this series of performances in unusual places. So that was another treat, and it was in this absolutely beautiful sunny day, early, early, early. I think I was on at like 8 in the morning, um, or going along the river in the middle of Melbourne. It was fantastic. Yeah, like another amazing thing to do.
I mean, I was going to say, you must just feel so grateful at the moment with everything that's come your way. I mean, obviously, we're about to talk about the album, which has been a huge success as well. I mean, are there moments when you just literally have to sort of sit back and take a few minutes and go, whoa, this is where I am now?
Um, I think I'm trying to make a point of doing that really, because the whole thing about what I'm doing is that if you don't enjoy the moments, then you're kind of missing the point. Like, I think when you're younger and you start out, you're encouraged to think, oh, I'm going to hit that target and then I'm going to hit that target. But then when you've had a long career, you realize that it's not Jacob's ladder. You're not always trying to look up to the next bit. It's about actually going, oh my word, this is happening and that's happening. And I feel like I don't know what will happen with my career this time next year. It's a real, I've never been in control of the ship, but I can really, really appreciate the opportunities that are in front of me and have fun. I mean, if I'm not having fun doing something I love, like then it's wasted on me.
Now we must talk about the new album, Hana, which I love. I've listened to it time and time again. It is fantastic. I mean, where do you start when you're thinking of when you're sort of starting the process of a new album? Where do you start? How do you kind of know what you're going to do with it?
So with the album, that's had a very, very strange journey, because I actually started making that album in January of 2020. And at that time I was looking at a very different landscape of what kind of album I might make, and how the rest of the year was going to play out. And then this album became much more personal due to lots of things, really. I suppose most significant thing was I lost my stepdad in July of 2020. So writing the album became a place to put that. But also, obviously, with what happened with lockdown and not being able to get together with my collaborator, Ed Harcourt, as easily, led probably to writing songs about escape and space and all this other stuff. It became far more fantastical, far more sort of innocent in a way. It kind of needed to be somewhere I could go that was I don't know, a happy space, I suppose, whilst everything around could be a little bit jolly, sorry, heavy rather. So I needed the space that was jolly. And I think it totally shaped the album, but I had no flippant idea. I mean, albums are like diary entries. You're just sort of reacting to what's going on. But I think it's the most dramatic backdrop I've had for releasing an album, actually.
I mean, when you come to naming an album, how do you decide a name? Because I mean, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Make a Scene, one of your previous albums, was actually originally supposed to be named something else. So is that quite a sort of a choppy, changey decision to name an album?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me. I guess it depends on the person, but for me, I name them quite not like actually with I think with Wanderlust and Familia and Hannah, all three of them, I named them when we got to the point where we were in the studio recording them. So they're all written, but it's like as it starts to take shape. And I've had a lot of kids. I like naming things. I like naming people. I like naming albums. I like naming songs. um, and I knew I wanted something that referenced Japan, because a lot of the album was written with the sort of fantastical version of Tokyo in my head, because I'd visited there in February 2020. So I kind of wanted to roam the streets again in a sort of, dreamy way. But I also wanted something that was about optimism and beauty. So when I found the Japanese word for blossom, Hana, I was like, that's it. Blossom is about springtime and new beginnings, and, that beautiful, all the colors. And I just thought, that's it.
And the album itself it's a beautiful sort of package. It looks fantastic. Also on the back cover, I believe, was a photo that was taken by yourself. Was it kind of spare of the moment that you weren't planning it for the album cover? It just, or the back cover, was it just kind of a bit natural?
Oh God, I mean the album. I didn't know what the album was. I mean, by the time I went to Tokyo, I think we'd written 2 songs. So yeah, we were very, very, very far away from any thought about artwork or visuals in that way. So no, that was just one of the pictures I took on the way home, and I just really liked it because it was as we were leaving Tokyo on the little coach, the airport shuttle, looking out over the water in the city. That bit where you're saying goodbye to a significant holiday, and my mum's looking out at the view. My eldest boy Sonny is on his phone, and it was just the 3 of us on the trip. But there was something about the image that I thought was really evocative. And I loved the mood and the colors. So it was really nice to put something so personal on the back, just to contextualize the album. And I think it is my most personal album in a lot of ways, actually.
Now, if you don't mind, we'll go through the tracks and sort of just tell us a little bit about kind
Mm.
of the inspiration for them. So obviously the first track is A Thousand Orchids. So how did that come about?
So that was actually the first track we wrote as well. So with this project, we already had the idea of making it quite synthy, quite dramatic. I didn't really want strings on there. We had the idea that it was already going to have this slightly sort of like a dreamlike version of Japan. I was about to go when we were writing, so I kind of was already thinking about what it might look like, but a kind of filmic version, not a literal. And I think Ed was talking about in Kill Bill, when Uma Thurman is having that fight scene in the snow, and he pictured all these orchids falling down like snow through the sky. So that's when we started writing. But also we knew, following on from the last two records we'd made together, that some of the characters we'd had on those records weren't going to feature on this album. So that's why we say that you'll find no witches waiting here, because the characters in the previous two albums, there'd been a witch we'd followed for a couple of songs, and it was like, nah, we're going to start something different. This is going to be its own beast.
Now, obviously, Breaking the Circle was the lead song from the album. I mean, how do you come to
Mm.
decide what song you release first? And tell us a bit about the song, because it's a beautiful song.
Thank you. Well, the song is about sort of late night philosophical discussions where you feel like a little bit of a fizz of excitement about tomorrow being possible, of anything happening. And as for the single thing, I kind of do that a little bit by committee with people I listen to. So Richard, my husband's definitely in there. Ed, of course, my gut instinct, my management, my team around me. And actually, once we settled on Breaking the Circle, I thought, I do think that's the right choice. I love the drama of it. And when I got to perform it, the first time we did it live was with the piano in the piano rooms for Radio 2, where you do it with the full BBC orchestra. And oh my God, it sounded incredible. So I have that song to thank for a very exciting moment for me.
And the music video looked fun to film. That must have been quite a joy.
I like making videos, yeah. And what was quite sweet is that so Sophie Muller, who I work with mostly, she wasn't around, but I didn't want to leave. I wanted something that was kind of related to our work. So the director is a guy called Remy, who had assisted when we did the Wanderlust video. So he did Young Blood and Runaway Daydreamer. So he'd worked with Sophie and assisted on that day. And now he's like, then he was a teenager, now he's all grown up. And his mum is Lisa, who's done my hair and makeup for every video. So it was kind of like a cousin of what we'd done before. So that was nice.
Now, the next song I believe is very special to you because it's Until the Wheels Even Fall Off. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So this song is some of my lyrics, and some of the words are pretty much directly lifted from a letter that my stepdad left. It was outlining what he wanted said at his funeral. And we found it on the day that he died. And I just thought this passage he spoke about, basically, I suppose, the love affair he'd had with my mum, and how the way they'd, you know, beaten cancer was to actually live life to the absolute fullest. And I just loved the sentiment. So, you know, he said, you know, burn the fancy candles, drink the best wine, just take the adventure, because that's what life is. That is the essence of life. So I tried my best to put it into a song that I think he would have liked.
Now, next we've got Everything Is Sweet. Now, this one was sort of had a bit of a release. So where did this one come from for you?
This song is a sort of unrequited love song, really. I think it's someone who's very intense. They've basically built a fantasy world around someone who is probably fairly oblivious to even knowing they exist, let alone their adulation. So it's sort of saying, you know, I think if you could just notice me, if you could just see what life we could have together, then everything would be sweet and lovely and nothing bad would ever happen, and it'll be amazing. But you kind of know that outcome is very unlikely.
Now, I have to say, my favourite song on the album is Lost in the Sunshine. I think it is beautiful.
Oh,
The music video that goes with it is even more beautiful. It was in Rome, I believe you filmed that.
that's right. Yeah, so that's with Sophie. So my long-term collaborator. She's the director I've worked with far and away the most. And I really trust her, and we always have fun. So yeah, what's not to like about running around Rome? And the whole song is it's a dreamy, indulgent sink into one of those lazy, hazy summer days where you know, you've got the sort of warmth on your skin and it's almost like the day's kind of heavy with heat and you're just and there's no other place you got to be. You're just allowed to enjoy it, drink your margarita and have a nice time.
Now, next we have Tokyo. So I imagine this was inspired by Tokyo, your trip. So where did this one come from?
It was inspired by the trip, but probably not in the way you might think, because it was written before we went. So this was the song where I was trying to imagine being there. So I knew it was going to be my mum, Sunny, and I. I knew I wasn't supposed to be going because my stepdad originally was going to go, but in the end he was too ill to travel. So I'd stepped in very last minute. So the song is written about that really, and like my idea of what it'd be like. So it says things like we take shelter from the rain because the forecast was for rain. It didn't end up raining, but it's got a kind of it's got a bit of melancholy in there really, because even though the trip was really incredible and it was lovely to have, you know, us three generations together, there was definitely an undercurrent of sadness because we knew we were approaching the end of an era. I thought that meant the end of an era with John being in the world, but obviously it also came to have resonance as the end of an era, as in pre-pandemic. So I traveled back from Tokyo at the end of February, and 3 weeks later we did the first kitchen disco in lockdown. I mean, it was just by the time we got to the end of March, the idea that I'd gone to Japan a few weeks before was like unimaginable. It had nostalgia inbuilt from very fast, and I think that's why I wanted to get that feeling of yeah, the mood of something, sort of the sands shifting really.
Now, next we have Beyond the Universe. So where did this one come from?
So this is the first of a few songs I think that are about kind of escape. I mean, I love the idea of when you write songs about love giving you sort of almost superhuman powers to sort of transcend usual reality. With this one, it's all about feeling that, you know, your feelings are bigger than the world, really. So you're like, let's do it. Let's just go off into outer space and just float in our own little constellation.
Now, I mean, I'm going to quickly jump to a different one just because it sticks on the theme. Obviously, We're Watching You is a great way to finish the album. Um, Very alien feel. And I mean, was that always the intention?
Yeah, that's literally what it's about. So my favorite ABBA song is a song called The Visitors, which I think has got a feel of like it's actually about Cold War and people eavesdropping and spying, but I always felt like it sounded like it was about aliens visiting. So this was my kind of much more literal take, I suppose. But I think as well, because, you know, while this was being written, we were dealing with the fallout from COVID, government in a mess, just lots of things feeling like they weren't going very well, and people were just being kind of bamboozled with difficult news. So this was these aliens who've been watching us, and they're like, okay, it's time. Now we're going to let you know that we're here, and we're going to take some of you, and we're going to start life again somewhere else. It's you've buggered it up enough. It's time to start again.
I mean, it must be you kind of have that license when you're writing, I imagine, to do anything. So when you're writing, do you have those days where you're kind of writing and it's just not necessarily nonsense, but there's a lot of like just madness that goes on, or is it quite sort of, you know, are you quite strict with your writing and keep it quite sort of, you know, I don't want to say sensible because that sounds awful, but you know what I mean.
Um, I think it's not really one or the other. I think it's like when you're watching, you know, a film, you can kind of step into any reality so long as the rules stay consistent within that new reality. And songwriting's like that too. So I try and inhabit whatever I think that mood is, whatever that space is. So I think if you're writing with someone where you feel really safe and there's trust, like I have with Ed, then no theme is out of bounds, but you want it all to hang together. So it's not just like, oh, let's be a bit madcap. You're trying to be true to a conceit, really. So you sort of, it's like I don't know, painting a room a certain way and then stepping into the room and trying to articulate it as best you can within the way you feel. And that's why, you know, you can be happily married in your real life, but, you know, write a song like Reflections, which is all about something breaking down. Because when you songwrite, I feel like you can take any little tiny passing emotion and then you can blow it up super big, and then you dive into that. Like, what if that was all I was feeling? What if I was in the epicenter of that feeling? And that's basically how I've always opened up all of that for me. That's how I write. I kind of try and step into something.
Now, another song that I want to mention that I thoroughly loved is Broken Toy. I mean, it's such a, I don't know, there's just like a nice, it's got like a sort of a retro feel to it. Where was the sort of your head at when you were writing that song?
So I think Ed and I have a bit of a penchant for writing about something that's normally not animated, sort of being given a life force. So we did it with 13 Little Dolls on Wonderlust, which is these little spooky dolls who listen to your troubles and make them go away, but you're not quite sure if they've got good intent. And then on Familia, we did a song called Puppet Heart, about, yes, being someone's sort of plaything. And Broken Toy really is the sad version of that, I suppose. It's like the idea that someone who, when they loved you, they gave you everything, but as soon as it became, you know, faulty, you were kind of thrown aside like a broken toy. But you're like, oh, maybe one day they'll want to interact with me again, and we'll be back to normal.
And I mean, I really love the sort of the broken jukebox type sound there. I mean, when you're kind of putting the music together, how do you sort of decide what you're gonna, or how it's gonna sound?
I mean, I think, you know, I should probably credit Ed with the majority of that, because we're in his studio. He's got billions of things lying around. So sometimes I'll say, oh, have you got anything that does this? Or I want a line that goes here. But sometimes he'll just start playing with some of his amazing, you know, plugins or synths, and just start getting something up and just like oscillate something or play around. And yeah, we'll just have fun really. And then I might say, oh, what if you slowed it down? Or what if we sped it up? Or what if we sampled that? I mean, that's like having lots of toys and playing with them really. And I think that's what being in the studio should be like. And then you get your demo, but a lot of the elements in it, you actually end up keeping them for the record. I think that's kind of how it's supposed to feel. You kind of should bounce around and use up all the inspiration you have on the day, so that when you come back to it, you realize you've actually laid the foundations for the finished track.
Now, just as we sort of near the end of our chat, I mean, what would you, I mean, obviously an amazing album. You should be so proud of yourself for this. What would you say is your favorite track personally from this album? Or does that change all the time?
No, I think I mean, when we were in the studio, I definitely always loved We've Been Watching You. I just like the stance of it. But actually, when we're doing it live, I mean, funnily enough, Broken Toy really was really fun to do. But I think also Until the Wheels Fall Off, it's just one of those songs that we've done acoustically recently, and the bare bones of it. I mean, I don't think, when I write songs that are very emotional, it's very satisfying. I enjoy that catharsis. And so I feel fortunate that I've got a place to put those things. So I think that's the song I'm probably the most proud of, actually. And I've got a good feeling that John would have liked it. So that's really the aim of the game.
And I mean, the other question we have to ask, do you kind of have any idea as to whether there'll be any more tracks released from the album? And do you know what that might be yet? Or is that still kind of a way off yet?
No, I do know. So Beyond the Universe is the next single. That's going to radio, I think, pretty much now. So that's exciting. And then, yeah, we're actually thinking about maybe doing a fourth one. We'll see. I mean, that'd be quite a lovely thing if I get to do that. But regardless, it's been really exciting to see how Hana's been received. And yeah, I'm really happy it's out in the world. And sometimes when you release music, it's like they kind of gain an extra life force, and that feels like that's what's happened. So that's really special.
Now, I just want to say, as ever, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you. As always, it's always a pleasure. Of course, you know, keep well, keep safe. And yeah, all the best of luck with, you know, plans going forward. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, and all the same to you.